So I wanted to take some time to properly articulate what it is I'm seeing with this Charlie Kirk stuff. And I think there is like multiple levels of consciousness going on, and I have some recommendations. So at the base level, I think the lowest level of consciousness that we have in the whole situation, right? So let's look at it from like a timeline and a consciousness level perspective, right? From that perspective, what we have is basically like people who have no empathy, right? Because if you are seeing Charlie as an enemy who needs to die and you're celebrating that, well, that's quite a choice, right? Because you don't have enough empathy to consider that, oh, maybe it's a bad thing that a non-violent, relatively moderate person was shot for his political beliefs. That's certainly a way to pretty much stop political conversation, right? And so then, right, like, and as you get into that, we're getting into the breakdown between left versus right, which left versus right isn't real, right? They're two wings of the same bird. Even if Trump might be the outsider, once he gets into power, nothing ever changes. We still have Babylonian money magic. We're still importing people to the tune of millions. We're still losing our society is at a breakneck speed, and they're collapsing as it is, right? And so, it doesn't matter whether you pull the red lever or the blue lever, your society is going to collapse either way. Right? So left versus right is not real in any way, sense, or form, because it's just because it's always been that way, and it'll never solve the problem, right? Because we've been at this for, with the United States, you're at that for 250 years, and this is the worst it's ever been. So obviously, democracy or politics as it stands is not a viable solution for any of this, right? So left versus right just isn't real, right? But at the same time, it is very much a matrix activity. It's very much a matrix activity for them to harvest Lucian energy into their false reality timelines, right? So one of my fundamental axioms for this place is that if the situation were hopeless, the propaganda wouldn't be necessary. Okay? If the situation were hopeless, the propaganda wouldn't be necessary. Okay? So within that, you get this idea of, oh, well, if the authoritarians among us were strong enough to throw us into concentration camps and kill us all, and if that's what they wanted to do, that's what they would do, right? Like, that's kind of where we're at, is that for some reason they need to convince us that whatever it is we're doing is okay, right? It's kind of like 9/11, They inflicted trauma upon a populace, and they used that trauma to stir everyone up into a fervor, and then they had them go after a foreign nation. So like that's kind of what it is, right? It's just sort of like this. It's this bull. The populace is a bull. They're the what is it? It's not a maitre d. Whoever it is that does bullfighting. They're bullfighters. They just throw up a red flag and they go, "Hey, look, everybody jump." and then we do, and then we're confused as to why we keep getting these awful outcomes, right? And it's because nothing ever changes in the true seats of power. The people behind the power behind the power, the most powerful people you'll never know. You'll never hear of them because their goal is secrecy. Their goal isn't to be known as the most powerful or rich man on earth, right? So you basically have these demonic level entities. Like, they're probably one step above the demonic, right? Well, and the people who run this place are definitely, Satanists would probably be the best way to put it. Because they prefer basically human suffering over human flourishing. That has been demonstrated time and time again. And no, I will not be taking any, I will not be taking any L's on that statement, any feedback on that statement. Because clearly this society, as we've seen time and time again, has really just been designed to maximize human suffering, right? So we've got demon level consciousness, which are the people who killed Charlie Kirk. Then one step above that, you got people on the left who are celebrating his death. One step above that are people on the left who are empathetic as far as Charlie goes. And I think that's a big, wide swath of the left. I think the true unity is finding like solidarity between the right and the left. Ultimately, I think the true level is to step out of this thing entirely. Step out of the left versus right duality, because like I said, this is a whole energetic hamster wheel. I had been following politics for years when it came to October, November of 2024 or whatever, Trump's last election. And then as soon as Trump won the election, there was a switch in my brain that just flipped. That was like, oh, we don't have to worry about politics anymore. And it's not that we don't have to worry about politics. It's that politics as a exercise in a hobby or like learning about something, it's a hamster wheel, right? Because like what I said is it's left versus right, and left versus right is an improper duality in any sense because it's never going to get you anywhere. It's never going to solve anything, right? Because it all gets funneled back into the same two wings of the same bird, and we never get any changes. All we ever get is the same outcomes, which is misery for the American people. The American Revolution was your birthright. Never forget that. Is your birthright. Not was, is your birthright. So that's kind of it. We got demonic, we've got, empathetic left, or we've got unempathetic lefties, empathetic lefties, and like the righties are about at the same point because it is of no benefit to you to be upset over one of your friends dying, right? It's like, Jesus said, well, like, it's something along the lines of like, every person loves their friends. Why does that make you special? The real special person loves their enemies, right? And so that is to say that like, ultimately what we need to do is forgive these people for trying, like, for whatever, like, it's really tough to get at the highest levels of consciousness because what it really is it's seeing the self and it's seeing the shadow in the self. And it's recognizing that shadow and it's having compassion for that shadow, right? That's kind of like true shadow work, right? So I try to maintain my sort of locus of control within myself as opposed to externally when it comes to like Charlie Kirk, and I kind of really messed up with this one because I like really belittled one of my friends who came to me about it and was kind of upset about it. And I was like, well, why do you care? Does it actually affect you? And ultimately, like, he left the conversation feeling bad, and I had to apologize, not long after that. Because I was kind of just like, I was just trying to stay away from it. But then I went into it, and it was like, it didn't help, because all of my emotions were just sadness. And sure, maybe I needed to purge those emotions, and maybe we all need to, like, get on that same timeline. But, like, I don't know, dude. I mean, I try to keep my emotions out of this stuff, because it just doesn't, like, I have no control over it. It's just shadows on the wall. We basically live in the cave, in Plato's cave, and we're looking at shadows on the wall and we're pretending as though that they're the reality. When all the world's a stage, we all know this is fake. It's like the number of coincidences that I've seen is just like, it's not possible that this was a lone gunman, patsy, right? I don't believe any of the stuff that they tell us when it comes to who did it and why. Right? Because there is another level of consciousness below the 5D of like, just forgive your shadow. And it's the 4D, like racial consciousness that's currently waking up. Some people have told me that it is the Anglo-Saxons versus the Satanists. That's the duality at the 4 or 5D level. I'm not exactly sure. It might be 4D. Who knows? It's not really important, because that's still a lower level resolution thing, right? Because that's still a duality dichotomy. And I don't think that hating and seeking the death or the destruction of another is really going to help you achieve your goals. I mean, of course, I am still for taking responsibility. If a crime is committed, then a crime punishment judgment can be executed, but it's not, at the same time, we really need to not I don't like actual violence. I think I don't quite understand, how you square the circle between taking retribution for crimes committed versus like love. But it's also about like, I've been learning a lot this week that true love is correction. True love will be correcting. True love will tell you truths about yourself that you never wanted to hear, but they will still be true. And then your challenge is to accept the truth as it is. So I hope that this gives you something to chew on and think about as far as ideas go, because I just think there's so many levels of consciousness here in this Charlie Kirk thing. And I would urge each and every one of you to not really take much of this seriously, not invest your energy in the Matrix, because it's going to continue to get worse. Honestly, guys, it is going to continue to get worse, and that's okay. Because a lot of this is just trying to shake people out of the Matrix, wake them up, and live real lives again. Bring the magic back, live in the real world as opposed to our fake matrices that they built for us. Because people like to talk about, oh, AI is this, AI is that, the Matrix, the Matrix. But it's like they built the Matrix and we hopped right in it. With these cell phones of ours and the exciting new technologies. And sure, there are parts of it where we never would have gotten here without the internet. But at the same time, we're so willing to give up our sovereignty at the first bit of convenience. And maybe that's the true dichotomy, is not to give up your sovereignty for safety, but for convenience instead. Right. So that is the truth of where we're at. I hope you all found this useful. Lucas Crichton out.